Hello, my dear friends. Welcome to today's lesson. I'm Logan, and I am very excited to be here with you. Today we're going to talk about something very important for all English learners. We will talk about how one simple conversation can change the way you learn English. It changed my approach to language learning, and I believe it can help you too. I'm sure many of you have struggled with speaking English, or have been afraid to speak because you don't want to make mistakes. You are not alone. A lot of learners feel the same way. But here's something interesting. One conversation can change everything. I want to tell you how this happened to me. In my experience, speaking English is something that many learners find hard. There are so many reasons why we feel nervous. Maybe we are afraid of making mistakes, or maybe we think our English is not good enough. It's normal to feel this way. We all want to sound perfect, but it is important to remember that no one speaks perfectly all the time. Even native speakers make mistakes. The truth is, mistakes are part of learning, but we can still be afraid to speak, right? I was the same. I would try to speak in English, but I was always worried that I would say something wrong. I didn't want people to think I was not good at English. But one day, something happened that changed my mind. It was one simple conversation that helped me see things differently. I learned something really important from that conversation. I want to share this with you today because I know many of you might be feeling the same way I did. If you have ever felt nervous about speaking English, this lesson is for you. Maybe you worry about speaking because you don't know enough words, or you think your accent is not good. I completely understand how you feel. But let me tell you, it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to not know everything. The most important thing is to try. The conversation that changed my approach to learning English taught me that the goal is not to speak perfectly. The goal is to communicate. It doesn't matter if your grammar is not perfect or if you make a small mistake. What matters is that you are able to get your message across and connect with others. I want to make sure you understand that it's okay to not be perfect. English is not just about memorizing rules and vocabulary, it's about communicating and connecting with others. Once I realized this, I felt so much more confident. I stopped worrying about making mistakes. Instead of being afraid, I started enjoying speaking English. It became more fun and less stressful, and that is what I want for you too. I want you to enjoy speaking English without fear. Learning English is a process, and it takes time. It's important to be patient with yourself. You might not speak perfectly today, and that's okay. The key is to keep trying and keep speaking. You will improve little by little, day by day. If you want to speak English better, the best way is to practice. You can practice with a friend, a teacher, or even by yourself. You don't need to wait for the perfect moment to start speaking. You can start today. Don't wait until you feel ready or until you feel like you know everything. Start speaking now, even if you make mistakes. The more you practice, the better you will become. I want you to remember that every conversation is a chance to learn. Even if it feels uncomfortable at first, it's okay. It's normal to feel a little nervous, but don't let that stop you. Just take a deep breath, relax, and speak. It's better to speak with mistakes than to stay quiet. You can learn from your mistakes and get better each time you try. In today's lesson, I am going to share with you how that simple conversation changed my approach to English. It was a conversation that showed me how important it is to try and speak, even if you don't know everything. After that conversation, I started speaking more. I wasn't afraid to make mistakes anymore. I understood that making mistakes is part of learning, and that's how I got better. I hope this lesson helps you too. I want you to feel the same way I did after that conversation. I want you to feel excited and confident to speak English, no matter how many mistakes you make. Remember, the goal is not perfection. The goal is communication. If you have ever felt nervous about speaking, don't worry, it's something everyone experiences. But you can change that. You can start practicing and speaking today. I am here to help you. We will go through this journey together, and I promise you, if you keep practicing, you will improve. So, let's begin. Let's dive into how one conversation changed everything for me and how it can change the way you learn English too. Thank you for being here today. I am really happy to have you in this lesson, and I hope you enjoy it. Let's get started on this exciting journey of learning English. I want to talk about something that I'm sure many of you have felt before: the fear of speaking English. It's a very common struggle for almost every English learner. Many of us feel nervous when it's time to speak, and we might even avoid speaking in English because we are afraid of making mistakes. I'm sure you've all been there. We all want to speak perfectly. We want our words to sound correct, our pronunciation to be right, and our grammar to be flawless. But the truth is, that kind of pressure can make learning English even harder. Maybe you've had moments when you were in a conversation and you felt your heart race because you were nervous about saying the wrong thing. You thought, what if I make a mistake? Or, what if they don't understand me? It's easy to feel that way, especially when you want to impress others or sound fluent. It's a fear that stops a lot of people from speaking, even when they know enough English to get their message across. The fear of being judged, the fear of making mistakes, and the fear of not being good enough can be overwhelming. Can you relate to these feelings? Have you ever felt that nervousness when speaking English? Maybe you've been in a situation where you didn't want to speak because you didn't feel confident enough. Or maybe you've been afraid that others might not understand you, and that made you stop trying to speak altogether. If you've ever felt this way, I want you to know that you are not alone. Many learners experience the same thing. I have experienced it too. I remember when I first started learning English. Every time I had to speak, I felt like I was walking on thin ice. I was afraid to make mistakes, and I thought that speaking incorrectly would make me look bad. So, instead of practicing and speaking, I would stay quiet. I would just listen and try to understand, but I wouldn't speak much myself. The fear of making a mistake held me back, and that's something I think a lot of learners experience. It's easy to get stuck in this cycle. You don't speak because you're afraid of being wrong, and then you don't improve because you never practice. Another common struggle many English learners face is not knowing enough words. Maybe you want to say something, but you just can't find the right words. This can be really frustrating. You know the meaning, but you can't express it in the way you want to. Sometimes it feels like you know just enough to understand others, but not enough to speak back with confidence. You don't want to make mistakes, so you just keep quiet. This can make you feel like you are not good enough, or that you will never be able to speak fluently. I had these thoughts too. I would worry about not knowing enough words, or not being able to explain myself clearly. I didn't want to sound silly or confuse the person I was talking to, but the truth is we all start somewhere. No one becomes fluent overnight, and it's okay to not know everything. The most important thing is to try. Even if you don't know every word, the key is to communicate. People will understand you, even if your vocabulary is not perfect. They will appreciate the effort you put into speaking. Sometimes the struggle is not just with speaking, but also with understanding others. English can be fast, and it can be hard to keep up with the conversation. You might find yourself missing some words or phrases, and that can make you feel lost. You might feel like you're not getting the message, or that you're not understanding things the way you should. This can add to the pressure and the fear of speaking, because you think you need to understand everything before you can speak confidently. But it's important to remember that listening and speaking go hand in hand. You don't need to understand every single word to communicate well. It's okay to ask questions if you don't understand something. The key is to keep trying and keep practicing. When I was learning, I faced all of these struggles. I was afraid to speak because I didn't want to make mistakes. I was worried about not knowing enough words, and I found it hard to keep up with fast conversations. It made me feel stuck. I felt like I wasn't improving, and it made me want to give up at times. But looking back, I now realize that these struggles are a part of the process. Everyone faces them, and it's completely normal to feel this way. It doesn't mean you're not good enough. It just means you're learning, and learning takes time. The important thing is to not let these struggles stop you. Yes, it's hard. Yes, it feels uncomfortable. But that's part of the learning process. If you keep pushing through, you will get better. You will start to feel more confident in your speaking, and those fears will start to fade. I want you to remember that it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to not know everything. The key is to keep going, keep practicing, and keep speaking. So, if you're feeling like I did, afraid to speak, worried about making mistakes, or not knowing enough words, don't worry. You are not alone. These feelings are common, and they don't mean that you're not a good learner. They mean you're on the right track. Every learner feels this way at some point. The important thing is to keep going, keep practicing, keep speaking. The more you speak, the better you'll get, and the more confident you'll become. I want you to know that it's okay to not be perfect. Perfection is not the goal. The goal is to communicate, to connect with others, and to enjoy the process of learning. You're doing great just by being here and taking the time to learn. Keep going, and remember that each step you take is bringing you closer to your goal. If you can relate to these struggles, know that you are not alone. And remember, one day, you'll look back and see how far you've come. So, don't give up. Keep moving forward, and let's talk about how a simple conversation changed everything for me. It can change everything for you too. Everything changed for me when I met a traveler who didn't speak my language. We didn't know each other's language very well, but we needed to communicate. I was in a place where I didn't speak the local language fluently, and this traveler, who was from another country, didn't speak my language either. We were both stuck in a situation where we had to figure out how to communicate with each other. At first, I was really scared. I didn't want to speak because I was afraid of making mistakes. I thought that if I said something wrong, the traveler wouldn't understand me. Or worse, they might think I wasn't good at speaking English. This fear was really strong, and I almost didn't want to try. I thought, what if I say something wrong? What if they laugh at me? The fear of making mistakes held me back, and I almost decided not to try speaking at all. But then I realized that this was an opportunity. I had to speak because we needed to communicate. So, I took a deep breath and started. I said a simple sentence, and I immediately felt nervous. I worried about every word, every sentence. Was it right? Was it wrong? But something happened that changed everything. The traveler smiled, and they understood what I was trying to say. They responded, and I understood them too, even though neither of us spoke perfectly. In that moment, something clicked inside me. I realized that it wasn't about speaking perfectly. It wasn't about saying the right words or using perfect grammar. What mattered was that we were able to communicate. I was able to express my ideas, and the traveler could understand me. And even though we didn't speak the same language perfectly, we were still able to connect. That was a huge breakthrough for me. The fear I had before slowly started to fade away. I realized that making mistakes wasn't the end of the world. In fact, mistakes were a part of the process. I made mistakes while speaking, but the important thing was that I didn't let those mistakes stop me. The more I spoke, the more confident I became. I learned that it was okay not to speak perfectly, as long as I could get my message across. For the first time, I understood that learning a language wasn't about perfection. It was about communication. It was about being able to connect with others, even if your language skills aren't perfect. This simple realization changed my entire approach to learning English. I stopped focusing on being perfect, and I started focusing on being able to communicate. After that conversation, I felt more confident. I didn't let my mistakes scare me anymore. Instead of avoiding conversations because of fear, I looked for opportunities to speak. I found myself talking to more people, even when I wasn't sure if I was speaking correctly. I didn't worry about grammar or pronunciation as much as I had before. What mattered was that I was trying, and that I was able to connect with others. This moment was truly life-changing for me. It was a turning point in my language learning journey. It taught me that language isn't just about words or grammar rules. It's about making connections with other people, sharing ideas, and understanding each other. That conversation showed me that I didn't have to be perfect to be understood. All I needed was the willingness to try and the courage to speak. Now, whenever I feel nervous or unsure about speaking English, I remember that moment. I remember how I felt when I was able to communicate with the traveler, even though we didn't speak the same language perfectly. That memory gives me the strength to keep going, to keep speaking, and to keep learning. It reminds me that mistakes are part of the journey, and that they don't define me. What defines me is my effort, my willingness to try, and my desire to connect with others. Looking back, I see how much that one conversation changed everything for me. It gave me the confidence to keep learning and the freedom to speak without fear. And I want to tell you that you can have the same breakthrough. If you're afraid to speak or worried about making mistakes, remember that it's okay. It's okay to make mistakes, and it's okay not to be perfect. The most important thing is that you keep going, that you keep trying to communicate, and that you don't give up. I encourage you to take that first step. Start speaking, even if it's just a few words. Don't worry about being perfect. You will make mistakes, but that's part of the process. What matters is that you are learning, you are improving, and you are getting better with each conversation. Just like I did with the traveler, you will begin to see that communication is more important than perfection. That life-changing conversation showed me that language learning isn't about being afraid of making mistakes. It's about finding ways to connect with others and express yourself. Now, I want to challenge you to have your own life-changing conversation. Find someone to talk to, and don't worry about making mistakes. Focus on the connection, focus on the communication, and you will see that language learning becomes easier and more enjoyable. I learned an important lesson from that conversation. The key lesson was that communication is the most important thing, not perfection. Before that moment, I always thought I had to speak perfectly. I was afraid of making mistakes, so I stayed quiet many times. But after talking with a traveler, I realized something. It wasn't about saying everything correctly. What mattered most was that I could get my message across. Making mistakes is okay. It's normal when you're learning something new. Everyone makes mistakes, even native speakers. The goal is to be understood, not to speak perfectly. When you try to speak, people understand what you mean, even if you make a mistake. And that's the most important thing. When I look back at that conversation, I see how much pressure I put on myself to be perfect. I was scared to speak because I thought I might make a mistake. But now, I know that it's okay to make mistakes. Mistakes are part of learning. They help you improve. Every mistake you make is one step closer to becoming better at speaking. So don't be afraid to make them. Instead of stressing over perfect grammar or pronunciation, focus on what you want to say. The purpose of language is communication, not perfection. If you are clear with your words, people will understand you. If you make a mistake, it's okay. You can try again, but don't let the fear of making a mistake stop you from trying. It's better to try and communicate than to stay silent. Staying silent doesn't help you learn. It keeps you in the same place. But if you try to speak, even if you're not perfect, you are learning. Every time you speak, you are improving. Every conversation, no matter how small, is a chance to practice and get better. I used to think that if I didn't speak perfectly, people would laugh at me or think I wasn't good enough. But that's not true. Most people don't care if you make mistakes. They care about understanding you and having a good conversation. If you try, people will appreciate that. They will see that you are making an effort to learn their language, and they will want to help you. When you speak, try to focus on the message you want to share, not on getting every word perfect. Speak slowly if you need to. Take your time. If you don't know a word, try to explain it in another way. It's okay to say, "I don't know the word, but I can explain it." People will understand you. They might even help you find the right word. Another thing I learned is that communication is not only about speaking. Listening is also important. When you listen carefully, you can understand what the other person is saying, even if they make mistakes too. You can learn a lot from listening. Sometimes the person you're talking to makes mistakes too, and it's okay. It's all part of learning. So, don't be afraid to talk. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. The more you speak, the better you will get. And even if you make mistakes, it's still worth it. Every time you speak, you will learn something new. Every time you practice, you will get better. Mistakes are not something to fear. They are opportunities to grow. And remember, language learning is a journey. It doesn't happen overnight. Be patient with yourself. Don't worry about being perfect. Just focus on communicating. Focus on getting your message across. Focus on trying, even if you're not perfect. The more you practice, the more confident you will become. So, if you're scared to speak English because you're afraid of making mistakes, try to let that fear go. Just start speaking. You don't have to speak perfectly. You just have to try. The more you try, the easier it will become. The more you practice, the more natural it will feel. And before you know it, you'll look back and see how far you've come. It's important to remember that no one speaks perfectly all the time. Even native speakers make mistakes. But they keep speaking, and that's how they improve. The same is true for you. Keep speaking, keep practicing, and you'll get better every day. The lesson I learned is simple. Speak and communicate. Don't worry about perfection. Focus on what you want to say, not how you say it. And when you make mistakes, learn from them. They are part of the journey. So, the next time you are nervous about speaking, just remember that communication is the most important thing. It's better to try and make mistakes than to stay silent. I used to think I had to be perfect before I could speak English. I thought I had to know every word, every grammar rule, and every pronunciation perfectly before I could talk. But one day, I realized something very important. I didn't need to wait until I was perfect to start speaking. In fact, waiting for perfection only stopped me from learning. We often think we have to know everything before we speak. We think that if we make a mistake, people won't understand us or might laugh. But that's not true. The reality is, we can't learn everything at once. We need to start somewhere, and that somewhere is by speaking, even if it's not perfect. The more we speak, the more we learn, and the more we try, the better we get. If we wait until we are perfect, we might never speak at all. Perfection is not the goal. The goal is to communicate, and you can communicate even if you make mistakes. In fact, making mistakes is part of learning. Think about how babies learn to speak. They don't wait to be perfect. They don't wait to say every word correctly before they speak. Babies start by listening. They listen to their parents, family, and others around them. Then they start trying. At first, they don't say words clearly. They might mix up sounds or say things that don't make sense. But that's okay. Babies don't stop because they're not perfect. They keep trying, and they learn from their mistakes. As babies get older, they start speaking more clearly. They learn new words, and they learn how to use those words. But they didn't wait until they were perfect to start. They learned by doing, and you can do the same. You can start speaking, even if you're not perfect. The more you speak, the better you will get. In language learning, we often forget that we don't have to be perfect to start. We think we have to learn everything first and then speak. But that's not how learning works. If we waited until we knew everything, we would never learn. I realized that the key to learning is trying. If you keep trying, even if you make mistakes, you will improve. It's like when you learn how to ride a bike. At first, you might fall or lose balance. But you don't stop trying. You get up, try again, and learn from your mistakes. The more you practice, the better you get. Learning a language is the same. Every time you speak, even if you make mistakes, you are getting better. The more you try, the more you learn. It's not about being perfect. It's about making progress. The more you speak, the more confident you become. And soon, speaking English will feel easier and more natural. Many people think they need to speak perfectly, but this just holds them back. If you focus on being perfect, you might never speak at all. It's better to make mistakes and learn from them than to stay silent. Mistakes are a part of learning, and they help you grow. When I stopped focusing on perfection, I started to feel more comfortable speaking. I stopped worrying about every little mistake. I started focusing on what I wanted to say instead of how perfectly I could say it. And when I made a mistake, I didn't feel bad. I just corrected it and kept going. Over time, I became more confident. You don't have to be perfect to start learning. In fact, you'll never reach perfection. Everyone, no matter how good they are at a language, makes mistakes. Even native speakers make mistakes. But they keep speaking, and that's how they get better. So, instead of worrying about being perfect, focus on communicating. When you focus on communication instead of perfection, you open yourself up to learning. You allow yourself to make mistakes, and that's how you improve. It's important to be kind to yourself while learning. Don't be too hard on yourself if you make a mistake. It's just a step in the learning process. Remember, no one learns a language overnight. It takes time. It takes practice. And it takes making mistakes, but the more you practice, the better you will get. The key is to start. Don't wait until you're perfect. Don't wait until you know everything. Start speaking today, even if you make mistakes. In the beginning, you might feel nervous or unsure, and that's okay. We all feel that way when we start something new. But over time, as you practice, you will feel more comfortable. You will feel more confident. And before you know it, you will be speaking English easily and naturally. So don't worry about being perfect. Just start, speak, listen, and learn. The more you try, the better you will get. And remember, it's okay to make mistakes. They are part of the journey. You will improve every day, and soon speaking English will feel just like speaking your native language. Many learners feel afraid of making mistakes when speaking English. I understand that fear. It's common to worry about saying something wrong, but you have to remember one thing. Mistakes are part of learning. Every time you make a mistake, you learn something new. It's okay to make mistakes. In fact, mistakes help you improve. They show you where you need to get better. You can think of mistakes as stepping stones. Each mistake you make brings you closer to speaking better. Don't let fear hold you back. If you let the fear of mistakes control you, you will never get better. You will always stay where you are. But if you take action, even with mistakes, you will improve much faster. The best way to learn is by practicing, and the best way to practice is by speaking. Speaking might feel hard at first, but the more you do it, the easier it gets. Don't wait for the perfect moment to speak. There is no perfect moment. The best time to start is now. I challenge you to start speaking English today. Don't wait until you feel ready or until you think you know everything. Start speaking now. You don't have to talk to anyone special. You can speak to yourself. Talk to yourself in English when you're alone. This is a great way to practice without feeling nervous. You can also practice with your friends. If you have friends who speak English, try speaking with them. Don't worry about making mistakes. They will understand that you are learning. Most people will be happy to help you. If you don't have friends who speak English, try using language apps. These apps can connect you with other learners or even native speakers. You can talk to them and practice your English. Remember, it's not about being perfect, it's about practicing. The more you speak, the better you will get. Speaking every day will help you improve your skills. Even if you make mistakes, you are still making progress. Every time you speak, you get closer to speaking fluently. Don't be afraid of mistakes. Think about it this way. Every time you speak, you're improving. The more you practice, the more confident you will feel. You will start to enjoy speaking English, and it won't feel as scary anymore. It's normal to feel nervous when you start. Everyone feels nervous at first. But the more you speak, the less nervous you will feel. You will become more comfortable. Soon, speaking English will feel natural. And when you look back, you will realize how far you've come. So, don't wait. Start speaking today. Take small steps. Speak to yourself, speak with friends, or speak through language apps. Every little bit of practice counts. Every time you speak, you are moving closer to your goal. Keep going, and don't worry about making mistakes. The more you speak, the better you will get. Remember, learning a language is a journey, not a race. It's okay to take your time. The important thing is to keep going. Don't let the fear of mistakes stop you. Every mistake is an opportunity to learn and improve. Keep practicing, and you will see progress. So go ahead, speak today. Start small, but start now. You have everything you need to succeed. Mistakes are just part of the process. You can do this. Speaking is one of the best ways to improve your English, and there are many easy ways to practice speaking every day. You don't need to wait until you're perfect or feel completely ready. Just start. Here are some simple tips that can help you practice speaking English every day. The first tip is to speak to yourself. It might sound strange at first, but it's a great way to get used to using English in your daily life. Start by describing what you're doing. For example, if you're sitting at your desk, you can say, "I am sitting at my desk." If you're cooking, you can say, "I'm making dinner." It doesn't matter what you're doing, just speak about it in English. You don't need to worry about making mistakes. Just focus on saying the words and building your confidence. This simple practice will help you get used to speaking English more naturally. Another helpful tip is to send voice messages. This is a great way to practice speaking without the pressure of having to talk face-to-face. You can send voice messages to a friend or someone who is also learning English. If you don't have someone to send voice messages to, you can use language exchange apps to find people who want to practice with you. Even sending short messages is helpful. The more you speak, the more confident you will feel. Listening to your voice will also help you notice any mistakes you might make, and you can work on improving them. Voice messages are a great tool because they let you practice speaking at your own pace and comfort level. The third tip is to find a speaking partner. This is one of the best ways to improve your speaking skills. Try to find someone who is also learning English, or someone who speaks English and is willing to help you practice. You can find language partners online or in person. There are many websites and apps that can connect you with people who are learning English, and you can practice speaking together. It's a fun and supportive way to practice. You can talk about different topics, ask each other questions, and learn from each other's mistakes. Practicing with a partner helps you stay motivated, and it's great because you can learn more about the culture of the language, not just the words. Remember, you don't need to wait until you feel perfect to start practicing. The more you practice speaking, the better you will get. These tips will help you feel more comfortable speaking English every day. You don't need to be afraid of making mistakes. Mistakes are a part of learning, and the more you speak, the fewer mistakes you'll make over time. When you practice speaking, it's important to focus on communication, not perfection. Don't worry if your pronunciation is not perfect, or if you make grammar mistakes. The most important thing is to be able to communicate and understand each other. It's okay if you don't know every word. You can use different ways to express yourself. For example, if you don't know the word for something, try describing it. If you don't know the word for bicycle, you can say, "It's something with two wheels that you ride." This will help you feel less stressed about speaking and help you keep the conversation going. Another tip is to repeat what you hear. If you hear someone speaking English in a movie, a podcast, or even in a conversation, try repeating what they say. This will help you practice your pronunciation and get used to the rhythm of the language. You can also try shadowing, which means repeating what someone says right after they say it. This will help you get used to the sounds of the language and improve your speaking fluency. If you have trouble remembering new words, don't worry. One helpful trick is to use flashcards. You can write down new words and practice saying them out loud. You can also write simple sentences with the words you've learned and practice saying those. The more you use the words, the easier it will be to remember them. You can even put flashcards around your house or write reminders in English to help you practice every day. Finally, make speaking English a daily habit. The more you practice, the better you will get. Set aside a few minutes every day to speak in English, even if it's just talking to yourself or sending a short voice message. The key is to practice regularly. Even if you only practice for a few minutes every day, it will add up over time. Your speaking skills will improve, and you'll feel more confident when speaking with others. In summary, practicing speaking English doesn't have to be hard or stressful. Start by speaking to yourself, sending voice messages, and finding a speaking partner. Don't be afraid of making mistakes. Every mistake is a chance to learn. The more you practice, the better you will get. Speaking English every day will help you feel more confident and comfortable. So don't wait. Start practicing today. When learning a language, many students worry about grammar. They feel like their sentences have to be perfect. But in real-life conversations, perfect grammar is not the most important thing. What matters most is communication. The goal is to make sure the other person understands you. For example, if you want to say you are hungry, you can simply say, "I want food." It doesn't matter if the sentence isn't perfect. The important thing is that the other person knows you are hungry and want something to eat. In real conversations, people will understand you even if your grammar isn't perfect. Another example could be when you are asking for directions. You might say, "Where's the station?" even though the full sentence might be, "Where is the train station?" Both ways work. The person will still understand that you are asking for directions to the station. In many cases, people don't mind if your grammar is not perfect. They care about understanding the message you are trying to share. For instance, if you say, "I go to store," instead of "I am going to the store," people will still understand what you mean. The most important thing is that they know what you want to say. When you focus too much on grammar, it can make you nervous and stop you from speaking. But when you focus on your message, it becomes easier to speak and communicate. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Mistakes are part of learning. Every time you speak, you improve your skills. The more you practice, the better you will get. Another reason to focus on the message instead of perfect grammar is that language is alive and changes all the time. Different people speak in different ways. For example, in some countries, people might say "I have need to go" instead of "I need to go." This is not wrong. It's just a different way of speaking. The important thing is that the person understands what you are saying. You can also think about how you speak in your own language. Sometimes you might not use perfect grammar in your own language, and that's okay. People still understand you. The same thing happens when you speak English. If your message is clear, people will understand you, even if you don't use perfect grammar. To get better at speaking English, practice every day. Don't worry about making mistakes. Keep talking and focus on what you want to say. The more you practice, the more natural it will feel. Over time, your grammar will get better too, but the most important thing is to make sure your message is clear. Remember, speaking is about communicating. If your message is understood, you have succeeded, even if your grammar is not perfect. So, next time you are speaking, don't worry about being perfect. Focus on expressing yourself clearly and effectively. By doing this, you will become more confident and comfortable speaking English. As you practice, your grammar will improve, but the key is to keep going and not be afraid of mistakes. Every time you speak, you are improving your English skills, so don't stop. Listening is very important when learning a language. It helps you with speaking, pronunciation, vocabulary, and understanding sentence structure. If you listen to how people speak, you can learn the correct way to say words and sentences. You also learn how words are connected in sentences, which makes your speaking sound more natural. When you listen to native speakers, you hear the rhythm of the language. This helps you understand how to stress certain words and how to speak in a smooth and natural way. It's also important for learning new words and phrases that you can use in your own speech. Listening helps you improve your pronunciation too. When you hear how native speakers say words, you can copy them. This will help you say words more clearly and correctly. For example, you might hear the difference between think and thing. Listening closely will help you pronounce words in the right way. One great technique to practice listening is called shadowing. This means you listen to a native speaker and try to repeat exactly what they say. You say the words at the same time as they do. This helps you match your pronunciation, speed, and rhythm with theirs. It also helps you understand how to use the words in sentences. Shadowing is a very useful way to practice both listening and speaking at the same time. Another way to improve your listening skills is by watching English videos or movies. You can watch videos with subtitles in your own language or in English. Subtitles help you understand what the speaker is saying. Watching content in English helps you get used to how the language sounds. Over time, you will start to understand more and more without the subtitles. You can also listen to English podcasts or songs. Songs are a fun way to practice listening because they help you hear the rhythm of the language and learn new words. Try listening to your favorite songs and reading the lyrics. This will help you understand how the words are used in sentences. Podcasts are great for learning because they often talk about different topics, and you can listen to them in your own time. Another technique is to listen to slow or clear English recordings. There are many resources online where you can find slower English so that you can understand more easily. Once you feel more comfortable, you can start listening to regular speed English. Listening is also important for learning how to use new words in context. When you hear a new word, pay attention to how it is used in the sentence. This will help you understand when and how to use the word yourself. For example, if you hear the phrase take a break, you will learn that take is used with break in this context. You can then use this phrase when you need a break. As you practice listening, don't worry if you don't understand everything at first. The more you listen, the more you will understand over time. Try listening to short clips at first and then gradually move to longer ones. It's okay to listen to the same thing many times. Each time, you will catch more words and understand more. Listening is a key skill that helps you improve your speaking. When you listen more, you will become better at speaking because you will know more words, how to use them, and how to say them correctly. Listening also helps you sound more natural when you speak. The more you listen, the easier it will be for you to speak confidently in English. Remember, listening helps you learn English faster. So, take time every day to listen to English content, whether it's videos, podcasts, or songs. The more you listen, the better you will get at speaking. Don't be afraid to make mistakes when you speak. Just focus on listening and practicing. Keep going, and you'll improve your English step by step. To make English a natural part of your life, start by adding it to your daily routine. You don't need to spend hours studying. Instead, try small practices that you can do every day. For example, speak to yourself in English. You can describe what you are doing, like, I am eating lunch, or I am walking to the store. This helps you get used to using English more often. Another easy practice is to send voice messages in English. You can send them to a friend, a language partner, or even to yourself. It's a simple way to practice speaking without pressure. You don't have to worry about making mistakes. The important thing is that you are speaking and practicing regularly. You can also watch English videos or listen to English podcasts. Choose topics you enjoy, like movies, music, or sports. Listening to English in real-life situations will help you learn new words and improve your understanding. Watching videos with subtitles can also help you understand the language better and improve your listening skills. Remember, it's important to practice every day, even if it's just for a few minutes. Small steps each day can make a big difference over time. You don't have to spend hours studying or speaking. Just practice a little bit every day, and you will start to see progress. The key is consistency. If you practice English regularly, you will get better over time. It doesn't matter if you are not perfect right now. What matters is that you keep going and keep trying. Even when you make mistakes, don't worry. Mistakes are part of learning, and they help you improve. So start practicing every day, even if it's just for a few minutes. Speak to yourself, use voice messages, or watch English videos. The more you practice, the easier it will become. Keep practicing, and you will see progress. Over time, English will become a natural part of your life. I challenge you to speak in English for at least 5 to 10 minutes today. It doesn't matter if you're speaking alone with a friend or online. The most important thing is to practice. The more you speak, the better you will get. Don't worry if you make mistakes. The goal is to practice and improve. You can practice anywhere. Talk to yourself when you're walking, doing chores, or even sitting in a quiet place. If you have a friend or someone who is also learning English, practice with them. You can also join online groups or find language partners who will help you practice. The more you speak, the easier it will get. Remember, consistency is key. The more you practice, the more confident you will become. Even if you only speak a few minutes every day, it will help you improve over time. Don't worry if it's hard at first. Just keep going, and you will see your English skills grow. Now let's talk about the conclusion. The most important thing to remember is that every conversation is a learning opportunity. It doesn't matter if it's with a friend, a stranger, or even yourself. Every time you speak English, you are learning and improving. So don't wait for the perfect moment to start speaking. The best time to start is now. You can do this. Keep practicing every day, and you will see improvement. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. They are part of the learning process. Keep going, and soon you will feel more confident and comfortable speaking in English. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next lesson.